Frozen is a movie compiled with pieces of other movies and other TV shows, but one of the biggest sources, it seems to me, has gone completely unmentioned, because Frozen presents itself in such a way that the viewer won't mention where the sources of Frozen came from. This biggest unacknowledged source I didn't find in a search. I searched for it and found only references to Arrested Development as it appears in Frozen instead. But the biggest source, I think, is Heroes, the 4-year TV show that ran on NBC and has a lot of the same themes, the same powers, the same character situations that appear in Frozen and which are covered up by snow when the viewer is snowed in watching Frozen. And this happens in a vast variety of ways. You could probably watch Frozen, and if you've watched Heroes, you could pick up a reference for virtually every major event in the movie. And if you're watching Heroes, you see an allusion to Frozen every few minutes. The big similarity is that they both have certain powers displayed by the characters, but in Frozen, the ways that they are brought to light are covers. It's about covering up instead. Instead of disclosure, which Heroes is fundamentally about, and it ends with an act of disclosure of the ability of one person to heal from virtually any wound, and potentially through at least blood transfusions and other genetic manipulation means, to spread that means of healing almost anything, including aging, to all of the rest of the world. In Frozen, there is probably a similar character, Anna, who has the same ability, but her ability is hidden, and only the destructive powers of Elsa are disclosed to the world. There's a habit of the power-grabbing character called Sylar or Gabriel in Heroes, in that he suspends people in midair, pushes them up against walls, and then cuts their heads open, and he analyzes them to copy and acquire their powers, then kills them afterwards. This is similar to what Elsa does. There's also an empath character, the character whose power is the power of love. This is Peter in Heroes, similar to Anna, I think, in Frozen, because Anna's power is identified as the power of love by the scripters of the movie and alluded to in the movie itself. And this is empathy, capacity to copy someone else's power and still use it, but without killing the other person. So it's a murderer versus a thief in a way. Although Peter is a very good, lovable guy in Heroes, he is still fundamentally a thief. And this is something that comes out all through the internet now, and you see people taking pieces of other people's material and putting it into their videos to get more power. Elsa, in their confrontational scene, puts snow underneath Anna. Anna is repeatedly jumping and asking Elsa to catch her. And Heroes is full, absolutely chock full, of instances of people jumping from tall buildings or bridges or other heights and surviving the fall because they have regenerative powers, or because they're caught by someone else with the power of flight. This is what you see when they're playing together, Elsa and Anna says, "Catch me." She repeatedly jumps from the piles of snow that Elsa makes. And as a presumably empathic character, if she works like Peter in the Heroes series, she acquires powers only when she's around other people. In that case, you'd expect her powers to accumulate and increase as the history of the characters unfolds, which could be the case because Anna displays a lot more power toward the end of the movie than she does at the beginning. She may, each time a power is used against her, acquire that power. So when Elsa shoots her in the head at the beginning, she would acquire the ability to telekinetically push Hans away at the end when she activates a blast of force. Also, there is this repeated jumping, which is a compilation, a compression of what happens over multiple episodes in Heroes, because Claire repeatedly throws herself from various heights and then recovers and regrows her limbs and puts them back into place afterwards. Now in Heroes, you see this shown in the span of a few seconds, where you see multiple jumps and multiple savings, multiple snowings, multiple concealings of what Anna is capable of. Because when she falls from a great height and potentially could injure, break bones, and have to show herself healing in the movie, she is cushioned by snow, so we don't see that happening. Olaf is a similar sort of deception. We see him being splattered or broken up into different pieces and reassembling himself, but only in a comic fashion, and it's not displayed as something that can be possessed by somebody who's of flesh and blood. Olaf is also similar to something that's shown quite often in Heroes, particularly in the Petrelli family, and this is the deceptive hug. It's the killer hug. When someone wants to strip someone of their powers or is secretly plotting to kill someone, one of the common things they'll say is, "Give me a hug." Warm hugs, when warmth would destroy Olaf, are in some ways a recapitulation of the same idea, that you hug people you don't trust and you better watch out if you do it in the Heroes series. When there are several episodes of the empath versus psychopath confrontation. In Heroes, Peter, the empath, and Siler or Gabriel, the psychopath, are locked up together in a sort of purgatorial thought dimension. And they can't get out. They're the only people there. It's like an empty city. And they can't get out until they sort out their problems. Peter's anger toward Gabriel and Gabriel's irresistible urge to steal powers and kill people. So they can't, until they work out their difference and Siler heals, they can't get out of the prison. Now in Frozen, the same two sorts of characters are placed in isolation together. And they don't finish the healing process because Elsa keeps booting Anna, kicking her out and forcing her away. So Elsa gets released into the world when she hasn't healed yet. And when everybody's not ready to have Anna's potential healing powers disclosed to the world. Strangely enough, this solves one of the biggest questions, perhaps, in Frozen. Why should Anna be placed in isolation with Elsa when she hasn't done anything wrong? And this is something that's also alluded to in Tangled. The person who has the tremendous healing capabilities and who has the possibility to heal and reverse aging, potentially for the whole world, is the one who's most hidden and has to be put away from the rest of society, at least according to the rationale of the people in Tangled and Frozen. In Heroes, it's all about the eventual disclosure. Save the cheerleader, save the world, and the cheerleader is the one who heals. This is something that's echoed right down to our day, even perhaps in the Me Too movement, because there's an attempted rape of Claire in one episode, and it's halted only because she's killed partway through, and she has a stick thrust into the back of her head, which kills her, a symbolic form of rape. And that halts the physical rape for a while. But it's implied that goes on even after her death because she's found stripped with her clothes taken off. And this is told when she's in the morgue. The stick is taken out and she wakes up in the morgue and sneaks out. But this is not just a rape thing in the context of the show. It's a threatened killing of the entire world. Because if Bradley had been, or the quarterback, whatever his name was, Brady, I think, had been successful in killing Claire in his attempted rape and she'd stayed dead, that would have been withholding of the means of immortality and healing and de-aging for the entire world. So this could be something that's echoed down to the present day, because that episode where there was the attempted rape of Claire aired in late 2006, and the Me Too movement started up in 2007 and is still something that's discussed today. So Heroes has had a lot of echoes through popular culture, and not all of them acknowledged and openly discussed, which I think they need to be. The psychopath's ability of Claire and Siler is the ability to coldly look back and analyze people, whereas the empath's ability is the one who feels what other people feel and takes it on. And when we see these things displayed only from the psychopathic or narcissistic perspective, we're given this narcissist's view of the world. One narcissist that I've seen on a podcast, and this is I'll link to it later, he talks about seeing the world as if he has no self, and he's composed only of quotes and snippets of entertainment and popular culture taken from other sources. So Frozen is a movie constructed in that way, with its own workings covered up to the viewer, so you don't see that you're seeing the world through a narcissist's, psychopath's point of view. And this is important because, of course, it affects the way everybody looks at the world when it's such a huge influence on popular culture, and the way that we interact on the internet, where so much of what you see is just this narcissistic perspective of a false self constructed of pieces taken from other people. There's, in the song Let It Go is itself like this a mad fangirl's rant of pieces of what would be herself taken from another show, from the TV series, because almost every line in Let It Go is something that you've seen in Heroes. And it's seen the same number of times. In Heroes, the phrase Let It Go is like a theme running all through the whole show. It's presented under very specific circumstances. People are often captured and they say, let me go, or they're geographically separated and they say, let's go, because they have to go meet the other people. So there's a lot of let and go going on throughout the show. But Let It Go is presented with a very, very specific meaning in Heroes. 12 times that I've been able to count, it is said in a context in which someone is being told not to pursue disclosure, the revelation of truth, or justice. So they're saying, don't look into this any further, don't investigate, don't try to redress what's wrong. And of course, when this is said in Heroes, the people always disobey. They always go on and seek the truth. They always try to rewrite the past or change the alternate future. And they always try to heal someone or whatever. So then it's done 12 times. This is the same number of times that Let It Go is repeated in the lyrics of the song Let It Go, sung by Elsa in Frozen. But it's done the opposite way. It's done in such a way saying, don't look at, don't investigate. And when Elsa sings this, she starts out making tracks and then they disappear. Metaphorically, the song and Elsa are hiding the tracks of where the ideas for the movie came from. The past is in the past. Don't look at it. The past is in the other TV series. The key to understanding much of what's going on in Frozen is in the other TV series. Explaining how Anna, for instance, is not shown to have powers, even though she openly displays what have to be powers, and that all these powers are also displayed by characters in the Heroes series. The super speed is displayed by people like Edgar, and another one who's Matt's girlfriend. And the super strength is by Nikki, who's one of a set of 3 identical women genetically manipulated to be given powers just after their birth. One of whom has a split personality and can't remember what she's done. And another one who goes after somebody and says, I couldn't let it go when pursuing someone for revenge, a speedster. And when she gets there, discovers that he doesn't remember having hurt her because he's had his memory wiped. Memory wiping is a huge theme all the way through Heroes, and of course it's instrumental to the plot of Frozen as well. In that people, in order to cover up and not disclose that there are these people out there with powers, various people have to have their memories wiped at different times. The question in Frozen, of course, is if somebody exposes Anna to magic through memory wiping and being put in a community of various creatures with magical powers, does that give her powers in the process, even though she doesn't necessarily remember getting them at the time? And how does that affect Elsa, who if she's like Sylar or Gabriel, can absorb powers from other people, but must know that they are the ones with the powers in order to do so. So that would put Elsa in a situation where she could potentially absorb powers, kill Anna to get her powers, but doesn't do it because she doesn't realize that Anna has the powers. So there are all these things operating behind the scenes potentially if Frozen is operating in the same basic world setup as Heroes, and which are instrumental in trying to guess what actually happened in Frozen and what's likely to happen in the next version of Frozen when the second movie comes out. Now, there's various ways that people interact when they do these things. Sylar is very much like Elsa in that he starts up a snowstorm inside his mother's house, and he eventually kills his mother soon afterwards, first injures and then kills her. Much like Elsa talks about the storm raging on, when a storm is what was used to kill her parents, apparently. And this, there's so many echoes that you just don't know where to start. Maybe that's why people have not talked about them too much, but it's virtually a limitless potential mine of information for anybody who wants to set up memes. A version of the nobody meme could easily be done with Heroes and Frozen. You take a line from Heroes or a situation or a character, compare it to something in Frozen and say at the bottom, let it go, or nobody's commenting, essentially. And you could have a limitless way that you could meme the material from these two sources. So, well, I guess that's about all I'll do for the moment. There are a lot of these things I could say, but it's just hard to get them all out because of all the... there's so much to deal with. So I guess I'll leave it there for the moment, but obviously anyone who's watched these shows will have a lot to add and a lot of comparisons to make between the two of them.